Well, the 4th of July weekend was coming up, and the nursery school teacher took the opportunity to tell her class about patriotism. She says, "We live in a great country, and one of the things we should be happy is that in this country, we are all free." Well, one little boy came walking up from the back of the class, and he stood with his hands on his hips, and he says, "I'm not free, I'm for." You know, if there's anything that's built into the DNA of our country, it's the whole idea of freedom. I mean, freedom really is the consciousness. I was watching those John Adams series, and boy, it just seems like every other word was about freedom, and you just kind of get this whole movement and energy for it. So it's really in the DNA of our whole country is that whole idea. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not in our own humankind DNA as well, planet-wide, because there is that sense, that desire, that energy around freedom. But it's really the focus in particular. Our nation carries that torch of freedom. It's kind of, we have taken that mantle and sort of said, okay, we're the ones that are really like holding the intention of freedom for the world. And so we hold that in our own consciousness and our own hearts. And I think it's best expressed, the whole energy around that is best expressed in the inscription on the Statue of Liberty that was created by Emma Lazarus. And not many of us have read the whole thing. I hadn't really read it all because we get the last part of it. So I want to share it with you because it really embodies sort of the consciousness and the intention around what it is in this country. "Not like the brazen giant of Greek fame, with conquering limbs astride from land to land. Here at our sea-washed sunset gate shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name Mother of Exiles. From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor the twin cities frame. Keep, ancient lands, your storied pomp," cries she with silent lips. "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. The wretched refuse of your teeming shore, send these, the homeless, tempest-tossed to me. I lift my lamp beside the golden door." Now, is that not a powerful statement of our intention? Yearning to be free. Send me those who are yearning to be free. Send me those who need the light and the life of freedom, and I'll embrace you and bring you through the golden door to that experience. What an incredible intention for a monument, a country to have at what is thought of as the entryway to this country, the United States. Yearning to breathe free from tyranny, from poverty, from limitation, from control of whatever status exists wherever they are, from lifestyle, from economic slavery, from despotic control, yearning to be free, even knowing that despotic control is in its own dysfunctional sense of freedom, but we know that as long as our freedom is built on the backs of those who are not free, that we are not really free, that we only have the illusion of freedom. And so even the despot, its intention is freedom. That is their intention, but it's a self-focused and self-centered freedom, not a freedom of spirit, but rather a freedom of power that comes on the back of power. So even in our darkest moments of or a period of slavery, the limitation of women, of Native Americans, of gays and lesbians, we in this country travel the arc of freedom. That is our intention, that is our destiny, that is what we are about as a nation. We travel this arc of freedom, and all the oppressed groups, as they come to recognize the experience they are having, stand up. They have the space to stand up. Now, it may not be easy, but it's part of our heritage. It's part of who we are. They stand up. They deserve our support and energy and focus and love and encouragement to stand up whenever someone's feeling oppressed, whenever someone's feeling the hand of limitation on them, to stand up and say, It's my turn to be free. It's my turn to step into that space. And the freedom from judgment, from oppressive laws, the freedom to be, which is what our intention is, to be the fullest expression of God that we can possibly be, that we have come here to be in this reality. And that is what is intended from the beginning, from creation. That is the intention, always has been, and always will be the arc of freedom that shows up in our life and in our experience. Freedom from England, freedom from slavery, freedom from oppression, freedom from condemnation. It's in our consciousness. And so because it's in our consciousness, freedom will always find a way to emerge in our culture and in our society. Our work in our spiritual path is to embrace and to step into a greater sense of freedom. Giselle talked about it in her inspirational message, that sense of freedom that we connect with when we connect with the Spirit and the presence and the energy and the power and the love of God. And the most profound freedom that we can experience is the freedom and the understanding that we have come here to be like Christ. We have come here to be created, we have been created to become like Christ. And now the first thing probably most of us think when I say the word Christ is we immediately jump to Jesus. And part of our process, I think, in engaging in and understanding is to separate the word Christ from Jesus in the sense that Christ is not Jesus' last name. It is a definition of how he showed up in the world as the Christ, as the Messiah. Christ is Greek for Messiah or Savior. So as the Christ, as the Messiah, as the Savior. That's the definition that is attached to him. And so as we separate that and say the Christ is who we are, it is a way in which we identify us or ourselves as spiritual beings. So Christ references, at least in unity, Christ references our divine nature. It is our spiritual self. It is the Messiah. It is, in a sense, our Savior, because when we bring it forth into expression, when we engage our life in a process of connecting with and living that intention in our life, it comes into expression in our life, and it saves us from the limitations of our human condition. It saves us from those limitations ruling our life, ruling our mental life, ruling our experience. It helps us to no longer react to things in the way in which we might have reacted otherwise. It helps us to be loving where before we may have been resistant or separate or some other dynamic. And so in unity, we were created as the Christ. That's the way we view it. And so it's sort of a mental and emotional shift that sometimes we have to make. Now, Jesus was the best example of one who demonstrated that in his life most perfectly. That connection, that divine connection. Emily Cady said in Lessons in Truth, she said, "We have come to a place now where our search for the truth must no longer be for the rewards. It must no longer be our seeking a creed to follow, but it must be our living a life. But in our walk, we must learn to lose sight of results, which are the loaves and the fishes. We must rather seek to be the truth consciously, to be love, to be wisdom, to be life, and let the results take care of themselves."